Hello. All right, so I'm going to talk about my quantum healing hypnotherapy session, and I'm just going to run through it chronologically. But to fill in the background information on this session, I didn't know about this prior to July, I think it was, and it was one of the people who subscribed to this channel asking me if I knew about it. I said this in a recording somewhat recently, but at the time I got Doreen Virtue and Dolores Cannon confused. Doreen Virtue is somebody who makes, in fact, oh no, this is Radley Valentine. She makes oracle decks similar to the ones that I use. But she left the New Age spiritual movement and went back to Jesus exclusively to follow Jesus, and casts out all of the things that she used to do. But that's not Dolores Cannon. That's Doreen Virtue. So Dolores Cannon coined this method, Quantum Healing Hypnotherapy Technique, QHHT. And the person that reached out to me asked me if I had heard about it because it's designed to help you sink into brainwave states that can help you access your higher self or your subconscious. Think, delta, beta, theta. Theta is where we're actually kind of communicating with the higher self, and a lot of the times we're asleep when that's happening. And so the process of having somebody like regress you into that brain state and talk you through what you're experiencing is the service. There's something else. So Dolores Cannon has left us on the earthly plane. She has passed on, and her family made it so that you couldn't modify or evolve the practice at all. And that's when they made BQT, Beyond Quantum Therapy, so that the person who is the practitioner of QHHT is able to add and modify with their own skill set and spiritual gifts what it is that they can offer to take it, one step further. So the woman, going back to why I pursued this in the first place, missing time. I had a lot of stuff that I wanted to work through in the way of suppressed memories and traumatic experiences. But I've also done a lot of healing up until this point. And I was like, there's certain things that I know I just don't remember. I just don't remember. I have no idea what happened. I've never thought about it or tried to work through it. And so I had mentioned ETs and stuff over the summer. And so on the website, anybody can do this. You can Google quantum healing hypnotherapy, and it will provide you a tool to find a practitioner within your area. And so me and how I navigate the world, I have the ability to discern resonance in words. Like if something resonates with me, just like this has happened a handful of times. I know by reading somebody's name if they're going to matter to me. Just on the name alone because of the way that it feels. It's almost like synesthesia. And so I had that with the list of practitioners. It just simple scroll through, saw her name, knew that she was the right one. So I went out for this session on the 30th of October, and she had asked me to prepare 10 questions and a list of important people in my life. And I made the questions, but then we spent the first hour and a half of our time together going through them and adding items and taking items off. And, there was people that I put on my list that didn't come up at all in the session. There was people that came up during our intake conversation. And so we kind of modified with it back and forth. But about 2 days prior to doing it, I started having, I had a dream. I had a dream in which I saw ET beings. It was very being under anesthesia, but it's not working. It was like that. And I couldn't move and I couldn't speak. And I was really afraid. It was a weird dream. It didn't last very long. And then the following day, or maybe it was the day after, I had a deja vu that was prolonged during the day where I saw that again. I had the same feeling of immobility and kind of had a little vision that was similar to what I had seen in my dream. And that freaked me out because I was like, okay, what am I getting into? I don't want to go do this and then put myself into a situation where I'm overwhelmed with what like comes up, or not take advantage of it to the extent that I want to. I just wanted to like balance that. So I started meditating the day before, 2 days before, really. Like anytime I had free time, I was like thinking about it and like aligning, talking to my subconscious, talking to my higher self, talking to all my angels, guides, saints, and ancestors around the fact that I wanted to fully surrender and allow this process to be exactly what it needed to be for me, where I'm at in my healing, what I'm meant to do on earth, what I've done thus far, what I still have to release in order to be the person that I feel like I was born to be, who's trying to do a bunch of stuff to make the world a better place. I just want to sit around and paint pictures, all right? But, a lot more stuff. So I was a little nervous because of that vision dream situation going in. I told her about that, and we talked about it, and I told her that I think I got a lot of confirmation, I will say, prior to the session through guidance around the fact that like you're ready for this. There's a reason why you never thought about those experiences ever again. There's a reason why you're doing this now. And again, for me, it's like, it's so just divinely guided and led when somebody, it just, it randomly, it all fell into place. The other really beautiful thing is that I set this session weeks and weeks ago. I didn't know that it was going to correspond so closely with the lunar eclipse full moon, which is all about, the inner depths and shadow sides and like suppressed things. So it's taken me over a week to even be able to like walk straight. Like it was deep, it was intense. And so then I will also just put out this disclaimer about this video. If this isn't within your belief system, that's okay. Just let it go. I happen to really believe in the nature of the work. And I think because of that, I'm like a prime candidate to be able to do it, not to mention the fact that I'm almost like constantly visioning and getting psychic downloads. Anyway, so I really like feel as if anybody could utilize a practice like this, but your conscious mind and your perception of the activity will impact those results, of course. So from the moment I couldn't find her home, I was kind of lost. I mapped it into my thing, and then when I got there, it was like the road ran out and there was like a dropped pin, and I was like, okay. And then she just kind of like pulled up on me in a different car. And like from the second I looked at her, I just felt like I had already known her for a long time. It was just this connection. Definitely just past life, been around the block a few times with her. And so she leads me down this driveway. We get to her home. It's not at all what I pictured, which is very funny because I don't even know what, you can say that without realizing that you had pictured something. I happen to know the part of town. She's about 45 minutes away from my house, and I don't go to where she is very often. I only know of one thing that's over there, so I envision that place and whatever. But it was just this beautiful enclosed, like wooded home, and it had been an old stone quarry. So there was these like blast places where there was just like rock ledges and like open water falling. I even asked her, I was like, is the water always flowing, or is that just happening because it's raining out? And she said that it's always flowing, and I'm throwing in all the details, so it's probably going to be a long video as I work through this. And some of that stone from the hillside they had put into their fireplace. It was just beautiful, the whole thing. I was like, this is lovely. I like you. I like the setting. I like the day. I like the way that all of this feels. And so, we got to know each other. I kind of walked her through some of my histories. And what's very interesting is that when you're with somebody who can also communicate very between the lines, you start to have like kind of almost like high levels of telepathic communication where the words that you're saying are just formality. Like we were about ping, back, going very quickly back and forth while trying to remain grounded and attached to the mission of like setting the stage, because it turns out she's just a very kindred spirit and somebody that I believe that I was meant to meet for other reasons. And so when I was ready to go, under into the hypnosis, I got very, very comfy. She gave me about, 20 to 30 minutes just to meditate by myself. And I was in like a nice little twin trundle bed, like so many blankets, crystals all around me. The first thing she did, I was brought into the room where our session would take place. And then she left me there for a little bit before we even got into the intake, really. And there was this large crystal, like this big across and probably this tall. It was a huge specimen. And I was sitting on the couch just staring at it. I was like, I have to go meet you. But I was like, I'm going to be polite. I'm going to wait till she comes back. And then I will ask permission to go meet that crystal because I have to touch it. I have to. It was speaking to me. She comes back in the room and she's like, okay, first things first, come over to the crystal. And I was like, great. I already had questions for it. You know, we talked about the crystal. I put my hands on it, immediately saw just a blast of purple. It was beautiful. And yeah, so I had already I brought some selenite. I brought some like stones from my home, and like I get there and she already has every stone and more that I would have wanted on site. So that was a blessing. And, you know, I'm meditating, I'm dropping into this space, and she comes in, and then she guides me through, you know, all the questions. But the way this ended up transpiring for me is that the first like 45 minutes, my guides, I was very lucid and conscious for this. We were astral traveling, you could just say. We were remote viewing. It's very, very much like, honestly, it's like 11 in Stranger Things, or it's a lot like the Pensieve in Harry Potter, not in the way that they write about it in the books. I prefer that way, but you know, our memories get taken with the movies. So if you can imagine, if you're familiar with the reference I'm making, it's like a ink or a food coloring droplet is dropping in, but it populates immediately. It takes the shape of like a person or the setting in the Pensieve. It's where Dumbledore puts his memories. And then Harry goes in to view them. It's like that. So we were moving through time and space along the axis that we have access to. And what is that? It's my soul's like ability to access my own Akashic records and other lives. I mean, you can go back in time in this life and you can go beyond that. It's just that the soul, we have a great forgetting on purpose because it's too much. It's too much. Why would a person need to remember all their past lives if each life is designed to accrue new learning and lessons and karma? I believe that, well, okay. So first 45 minutes was past life hopping, really. And then we went into more of like a Q&A. And the benefit of having somebody walk you through this is I believe if I had tried to put myself into this state, I would have fallen asleep. I'm pretty good at maintaining like lucidity and consciousness for different experiences like this, but not the way that it is when somebody's there to guide you. And so, you know, we started recording and she asked me to kind of, you know, describe what was going on. And I very quickly just created a way to get around, which was me lying on a cloud. And I had different, you know, angels and guides with me, and they were gonna like lift my cloud up and take it places. Because when I'm in that space of like, I'm ready to see whatever I see, it's oftentimes just a void. You can also think about the sunken place where the woman with the teacup, he sinks down, it's just black, and I think there's stars. That's how it is for me, but I don't think they're stars. I think they're ships. They're little white lights, and they're just whizzing by. There's thousands of them, but it's just dark. So, you know, together through the visualization, we created a vehicle for me to take. It was a cloud, and then we rode it around, and we went and we saw different things. And every time it was like, wherever we need to go, whatever I need to see, whatever I need to remember, I'm ready to understand through the guidance that comes through why I'm seeing these things and what I'm integrating and how it's going to serve me. And so if you've ever seen, I don't want to do this, but I'll do it here, diagram. It's like a diagram of like layers of the body. Okay. And it kind of, there's all sorts of artwork, spiritual cartoon artwork on the internet that shows these different layers. But for me, it's very apt, showing the astral body, the conscious body, like in a sleep state, because the way that these little pictures, there's one in particular that I'm thinking of, and it has like the body as it ascends out of the physical body, getting lighter and less dense. And That's like the astral body and stuff, but you're still always all one person. You're always connected. Anytime there's astral travel or out-of-body experience involved, you're not gone. You're very much still there. It's just, I mean, it really exemplifies for us how elastic and navigable the time-space quilt is through, you know, a quantum understanding of subatomic entanglement and the way that things are a web. We're all connected. That's time and space. So in that moment, you know, on the afternoon of the 30th, well, by the way, this was not just one afternoon. I got there at 8:30. I didn't leave till 3:30. It was really quite a, you know, I was only under for about an hour and a half. But we had to decompress. I was like floating for the hour after we concluded and for like the next 3 days too. It's taken me a long time to process and integrate, and I'm still getting a lot of information as a result of it. So the first thing that we went to do, wait, did I finish like my intro completely? Oh yeah. Okay. So thinking about the levels of consciousness, my conscious mind was awake the whole time, but just barely. And so when we started recording and she would ask me like, what do you see? What's happening? I would speak and my voice would kind of get quiet. She'd say, I need you to talk louder. And that kept me conscious, but it also helped me submit into what I will consider to be like the fullest form of channel that I've ever done. Because when I'm channeling, I know when there's words and ideas because of the way I sort through my my guidance. Like I understand when things are trying to be channeled, but at my point in my spiritual development, I don't go into states of full channel where my conscious Mariah mind is completely to the side. People do that. Think of Esther Hicks or, gosh, I mean, so many other people do that. Probably where I'm headed, but it was very interesting to watch my conscious mind. And this is kind of a weird way to put it. It sounds not great, but it was very comfortable. So just whatever. It was like I was in a coffin. It was like I was recessed underneath the earth, or like, you know, I was in a bed, but I was very aware I was just removed. And then there was like these other levels to what was happening. And I was watching all of that. But as far as what was coming out of my mouth, as we progressed, the divide got greater and greater, where I was like, if I said something, I was watching myself say those things. I wasn't like responding to her. I was more so letting everything happen. And my guides were narrating through me in channel what that was. And then the other part of it that it's strange on the recording, because I know from certain parts when I listened to the recording back, I was prompted, like it kind of puts you back into that state of hypnosis, to be honest. So you have to, like, I'm spacing out my re-listenings of it. You come to me again? Because you don't want to, like, you know, do it when you're driving or anything like that. But I heard a certain part of it and I was like, I know for a fact that I was having, like, I can't even tell you how much information and like parallel visions and like timeline things. Like this was, I will say at the end of it, my guides were like, we're so proud of you for doing this. It's so timely. Like, you know, thank you for coming. You're all set to do what it is that you need to do now. Cause this was a really big like upgrade, you know, or recalling of stuff, of so many things. So, all right, let me get into it. First place we went, I was very awake at this point. I mean, I had been meditating in my cozy little space. It was very dimly lit. I had an eye mask on, crystals. So I was relaxed, but obviously still awake. And, I mean, at that point, even for somebody like me, I was like, I mean, what's going to happen? We might just have to wait for a while. You know, I'll start seeing visions like I do in meditation. Things will start to appear, but it was instant. I was dropped in. So my cloud, you know, took off. We're cruising around. We land, and immediately, you know, without recognizing things, I was like, okay, we're in Asia. I knew it. I felt it. And it was 1800s or so. And I was like Ready Player One looking, and I was in a crowd. And everybody was pushing me, and I felt smaller in stature than my current physical form. And I had a thing with me. It was papers, and I was moving through this city center. And I'm narrating this to her, and I'm talking to her about it. And what was very cool is that when I landed into this scene, again, with like being dropped in and everything just populates, what was really cool is that I saw who I had with me. I'll just call them guides, angels, guides, ancestors, saints, my little people. They flew out to the side and they were like holding I don't want to say, like a band of light. And I could see them in my periphery, even though I was in Asia, you know, in this marketplace. They were still there, just like high up, holding this band of light that kind of like went over the whole thing, kind of above where I was moving and looking. And so I'm like working through the crowd, and I go into this office. It's like a clergy place. I don't know what to say, like a notary. And I have these documents and I'm getting like rejected. And I'm telling her this, I'm like, something's not right. Like I can't leave. Something about immigration, and there was this stuckness. And so then I took my papers, they big stamp, big no on my papers. And I was like, okay, feeling really emotional, which is interesting because I have no idea where I am or who I am or when this is. I just have like the vibe of all of it. And she's asking me questions, but I was talking at that point. I was like, I hate these streets, the meat markets. It smells bad. Like I was starting to talk to her about how much I didn't like this situation. I was like, can we get out of here? Like, I don't want to be here. I know what this is like. He does the same thing every day. He hates it. I can't leave. I keep trying to go somewhere else. And she asked me to ask the angels what I needed to understand. And so I was talking to them, and they helped me see that this was a past life that I'm coming up, like in my current incarnation, having some friction with some of the emotions that I carried in this timeline. Because what I was seeing is that it was a man who was not as, privileged as I am today. He didn't have any freedom. He had to do the same stuff over and over and over again. And he hated every minute of it. And he didn't like where he lived. He didn't like anything about, what he had to do. But he had a lot of discipline and no freedom. And now I have a lot of freedom and I'm working on my discipline. I have a little bit of, what we all have as creative types, like ADHD or whatever. So many. I don't want to throw out labels because a lot of them fit. And frankly, it doesn't matter. But what I'm working on right now is being able to commit myself to completing things. And so it was interesting to go there because there was something like, despite how desperate it felt to be in that situation, it was like, there's a lot of this, resistance that I feel on an ongoing basis to completing things. Or like if I have to commit myself to a task and it has to be the same thing day after day. Like I was talking the other most recent video I posted about my oracle deck and how like I get an idea and I'm like a little comet, and the second it burns out and requires dedication for a very long time out of me, that little comet went out and I'm on to something else. And that's not, the makings of somebody who's trying to start a business and have a lot going on. And it was illuminating because I was being reminded that I'm not as stuck as he was, nor will I feel the way that he feels if I do what it is that I have this resistance to doing. So it was a nice, easy starter past life. I was like, and once we kind of worked through that, I was like, I don't want to see anymore. I don't want to be here. It was so interesting how visceral and strong I felt about that. I was like, I hate it here. Let's go. We got back on the cloud and we went. And then what was very interesting is that we were moving through time. I was in the void for a while and then we were moving again. And then this bright blue light, I could actually see the earth, but all of a sudden it was covered, it was shielded. And like later we kind of got into this, like Archangel Michael, right, came in, blue light, often associated with like the sword and protection, cord cutting. I'm trying to think, what is it? Strength of God? All the archangels have like a something of God, like Lion of God is Archangel Ariel. But what was interesting is that like while we moved back in time further beyond that life, we went over the earth at a time where there was just so much like war. There was something bad going on, and I wasn't to see that. And that was interesting. That was the purpose of him covering the earth in the light, was so that we weren't exposed to that. And so the next place we went, I'm going to summarize. I'm definitely going to forget a few of these, but I just want to, highlight the ones that are interesting to me to share publicly. And so, the next one, we drop in, and, I'm still conscious. I'm describing what I see. I'm like, okay, we're in a rainforest. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot about the intro experience. Yeah, okay. All right, I'm going to put a pin in the rainforest. We'll get back to that. The first thing that happened before I even went to Asia was that she asked me where we were. It was the same thing. I got comfy on the cloud, and they touched down. We touched down in a forest. And I didn't know what to do. And she said, well, what do you see around you? And I didn't know what, I couldn't really see anything. I could just see the trees. So I started describing them. They're slender. There's no branches until the very, very top. There's a lot of space, like 10 feet between each tree. So it's a mildly dense forest, soft, moist, mulchy earth. As I was describing, the scene started to populate. So in the corner, on the left side, I could see a hill with a cabin, and a very orangey incandescent light was on the front of the cabin, and that was up farther away. But in the back of the woods on the right, there was like this little cottage, little cabin, and it also had an orangey incandescent light. And I'm starting to describe these things to her, and she's like, well, are we going to go over to either one? And at this point, I didn't realize this, but when I listened to it back in the recording, like, I start speaking in really short, kind of childlike statements. And it was super weird, because in my conscious mind, as we worked through this part of it, I was just as like lucid and awake and aware as I was for any other aspect of it. But like my candor and my tone changed to being childlike. And this is funny to listen to. So when she's like, are we going to go, which one do you want to go to? Are we going to go to one of these houses, one of these buildings? I was like, I mean, we can. Like a little kid. And I don't remember saying it that way. I remember being like, yeah, let's go. And so she got me to describe myself. I was just I thought I was 5. I could see my little knees the way they used to be, like all knobby. And I had little white sneakies on, and I had my backpack on. It was red. And I was like, for some reason, there was this reluctance, but we ended up going to the cabin. We get there, and very strange, partially probably because I was kind of warming up to the experience of being led through the hypnosis, but also just because it was this strange childlike brain state. I get there, and she's like, well, what's happening now? And I'm like, I'm just waiting. I don't want to go in. We're just sitting there. And it had started to rain. And I was like, I mean, I'm not in the rain, I'm under the little awning. And she's like, well, why don't you, can you see inside? I'm like, I'm too short. I can't see inside. And we ended up going in, and basically this wasn't a past life for me. There's a part of me that really feels like it is this parallel world, in the same way that past lives are kind of like other timelines. Not necessarily, past life is just inherently flawed. It's simultaneous self. If we all kind of had a big shift around the way we understand past lives, and we started calling it simultaneous selves, then a lot more people would be open to doing shadow work and Akashic integration, and we could become our best selves and the planet would glow, yada, yada. So, by the way, there is a professor from the University of, Arkansas, Tucker, and he did a study with children, over 2,000 children under the ages of 7, who vividly remembered and recounted past lives and could tell you things that they have no exposure to in this life, like flying a plane. They could tell you about it. So research is catching up, right? We're understanding that these phenomena are not just isolated or small events. You get a lot of kids who talk about stuff from their past lives, because that amnesia, right? You are in essentially a subconscious or malleable brainwave state, you know, and then that's like between the ages of 3 and 7 when you have speech and like all your functioning, motor functioning and everything. And then when you're 7 and when you start to get more like impressed upon through your own reading and writing education, start to forget. But yeah. I do think, I mean, the same way that therapists now are a lot more open, I mean, because they kind of have to be to like astrology and stuff, because you're getting, as generations change, you have a lot more people who care about that, you know, and if you have you can be a very good therapist, but if you don't care if Mercury's in retrograde, then what are you going to do for me? No, I'm kidding. Wait, I want these. All right, let me settle. So, yeah, I don't know who... Well, I do. It was me. Okay. It was a witch in the woods in a cabin, and it was me. And it wasn't like, it didn't feel like a past self though. That's my point. That's what I was talking about. Not necessarily, it didn't really feel like a past life simultaneous self the way that other past lives that I've viewed from my own existence feel. It was almost like she was just an archetypal figment of my imagination. And I don't have clarity on that yet. I'm not really meant to know, I guess. So anyway, we sat with her, and I had some toys, and I was playing on the braided rug, and I was sitting in front of the fire, and we were talking about it, and I was watching her make potions and mix things. And it was really interesting because the whole message through this first experience was that she didn't use any recipes. She knew exactly how to do it. She was always doing it, and she really loved to do it. And it has to do with herbal remedies and oils and tinctures. There's a lot of stuff that I just like, you know? I mean, I got my stuff, very modest supply of things as far as like all of this stuff that is out there. But it was an encouragement from me to apply myself to making my own blends, because that's an ability that lies very dormant. But what she was telling me is that you're not even going to have to, you know, follow a recipe or remember how to do this. It's part of what you do, and it's part of how you're going to help people. So that was great. And then we moved on to Asia, and then we're back in the rainforest. So we're in the rainforest, and she's like, okay, you know, what do you see? And I all I could hear was bird song, and I was listening to it. I was like, it's so beautiful. It feels like it goes for miles. It was, I mean, we all know what it's like to be in a forest. And if you don't, I mean, we need to fix that. We all know what it's like to listen to a lot of birds. This, in my experience, it was otherworldly. Just the amount of bird song was beautiful. And so I was basking in that. And I start to look around. The trees were really, really, really tall. And I knew I was looking for one tree in particular. I didn't know how I knew that, but that was why I was there. And so, you know, she's asking me again, like, can you see yourself? And this was weird because I remember I almost like peaked in conscious mind a little bit, where I was like, almost like I could have snapped out of the whole thing, you know, and just sat up and been like, okay, because I was lucid. It's like being in a lucid dream, right? I remember she asked me to describe my body and stuff. And I remember looking down at myself, this is why, by the way, reality checks for me, like looking at my hands is such a big deal for me, because it's what I remember to do when I'm in an altered state of consciousness doing astral travel or out of body stuff or deep meditation or lucid dreaming. It just always helps me. So I kind of pulled up my hands and stuff, and I was like, well, I'm a different race. It's like I have brown skin. My feet are bare. I've got no shoes on. Like I'm a woman, but I'm not really wearing a lot of clothes. And oh yeah, I was like almost breaching the lucidity of it, where I was so conscious that I felt like I was gonna wake up, even though I was already awake. Just because I remember thinking, there's nothing about this on the recording or anything, but I remember from being in the moment that I was like, this is incredible. Like, this literally is what it's like when people put on those VR headsets. This is why it's so crazy to me, because it's like there's always going to be something like the industry and all of these things. We're like, oh, isn't technology amazing? Look what we have the capability to do now. It's like it's like coming in to me. I see a meme, and since I'm already going to edit this, I'll put it here. It has to do with my dog and my cat, but it's like interception. Right when we have something natural that humans are waking up to be able to do, it's like, pay for it. Over here, we have it. It's silly, but anyway, I remember just thinking how amazing it was that I could be so lucid and so conscious, and in like a different body, literally in a different body, because I was checking it out and like, not mine. Whose is it? Like, where am I? What's going on? So I'm moving through the woods. I'm looking for a tree, and I was like, I'll know it when I see it. Like, and it was weird because in that moment when I became so conscious of like how crazy it was for me to be able to be doing what I was doing in that moment, I was like, I almost felt like I couldn't move. And she's like, well, let's go, you know, if we're going to look for the tree, we might have to move. I had to like watch myself like try to lift the feet up. And then I guess I must have sunk in a little bit further back down into like, you know, my subconscious state. My conscious mind went back into its little coffin box, its little recessed space. And so I got to walking. And once I started putting one foot after the other, it was easier. And I ended up finding my tree. It went completely on a slant. It was dead. And it went all the way up, and it leaned on another tree, or two rather, just like this, like that. It made a triangle. This was straight up and down. It made an isosceles triangle. And so we got to it, and I was like, okay, this is the triangle, and we need to walk through this. Something happens here. And when we walked through the triangle, oh, and she asked me like, okay, so we're in the rainforest, where are we? And I knew right away that we were in Bolivia, which is weird because I've never been there. And then additionally, what I talked about plays into, like, I don't know anything, to be honest with you. I'm not the best at geography. I've been to, I don't know, probably about 23 different countries at this point, some of them multiple times. And I love traveling, but my skill set, despite being visual, is not like that. So anyway, I'm just saying, it's kind of remarkable that the Amazon basin does touch into Bolivia. If you asked me that, if you said, is Bolivia a rainforested area? You know, like 2 weeks ago, pop quiz, I would have been like, no, isn't it in the Middle East? No, it's not. It's in South America, and it's next to Brazil. And so anyway, I told her that that's where we were, or modern day Bolivia is where we were. And so we walked through it, and on the other side of the cross, the triangle we went through, I was like, okay, here's where we go into the center of the earth. And she's like, great. I'm like, okay, nothing's happening. And I became aware of the fact, psychic download style, like it was like as if walking through it, there was some ability. And in this vision, by the way, the one in the forest and this one, my guides weren't there. They were behind me. That one in Asia was the only one where they flew up and around to like be part of the scene. It was very interesting. So they started just filling my mind with all the understandings about how this place on the earth works. And basically the deal is that something about the ley lines of energy in this area and the way that there were ancient grids of energy created a long time ago makes it so that when you utilize this one point that's in front of this cross, you can do a light body travel into inner earth. And it was a time, well, I mean, we'll kind of get to this. I still believe there are certain civilizations that aren't known or accepted in our like modern day understanding of history and civilization and everything. Society's living kind of inside the earth a little bit. I mean, this is in New York too. There are mole people. If you don't know about this, I listened to a very interesting podcast on it one time. There's a lot of people in New York City who have taken to living fully underground inside the city, like in the earth. It changes the pigmentation of their hair and their eyeballs and stuff. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, like Agartha and stuff like that. Basically, it was a portal into the earth, and it had a certain kind of light code that could access from outside Earth's atmosphere all the way into inner Earth, which was lit with something of an inner sun, not the core of the Earth, more so a light that was maintained by consciousness, because the beings that live there, actually, this is still kind of the case, isn't it? We can tie this back around. We'll get there when we get there. The other thing that I'm forgetting is that before we went to the rainforest, we went to outer space. Okay, so hopefully you can bear with me. I know it's like it's the same as it always is. I had some idea that I'd be able to get through a story without going on so many tangents, because I'm just saying what happened, but that is impossible. So going back in time just a little bit, after Archangel Michael put the blue shield over Earth, we were traveling, we went into outer space, okay? And we were outside of the atmosphere, and I could see the planet, and we were somewhere specific. I do not know where. I do not know like how far away from Earth we were. It was far away. There was a point of light that started out here in the atmosphere, and it goes all the way down, and that spot on the forest floor in Bolivia is where it hits the Earth. And it doesn't stop right there. It goes through the Earth. And so they showed me that first. They were like, it's a bright orange light. It has to do with Archangel Metatron and the Metatronic codes of activation. And so it starts out there, it goes all the way into Earth. And what they had me do when I got there is learn about it, basically, like listen and understand, and then try it. It's like take a step forward and your physical body stays put. It's just like doing the hypnotherapy. And then my light body went down and up, and it comes back, and it's like getting bathed or cleansed. But what I also understood is that the people in this lifetime, like ancestors and different extraterrestrial beings that collaborated with the people who lived in these more ancient civilizations, they would take things to this point, and they could not like bless them, because it sounds so, the whole is, we're already in this territory, but almost like fortify them. And there are other purposes of this place on Earth too, but I need to go there. I'm going to find it someday. That was very cool. And I got to see another, I don't want to call that a Stargate. That's not what it is. It's something of I call it that on the recording, but in the days that have passed, I'm like, it's not a Stargate. It's a portal, but it has to do with the energies in and around Earth. It's not to another part of the universe, if that makes sense. And so I'm still integrating. There's a lot. That was a very important one, that I see that and that I feel it and that I learn about it. So I'm processing that. And oh yeah. There was a Stargate that I got taken to that was on a beach. And what's really cool is that I've been on this beach before. I've had dreams, and I've also been there in a not necessarily a hypnotherapy regression, but a healing session with one of the other people that I work with. And I was clearing out past life energy, but I went to this Stargate first in order to go wherever I needed to go. So it was cool to see something that I remembered from my conscious life and memories. But big rocky things. And then like, I always come at the beach from this way. Like I never go this way. I'm always, for some reason, whenever I get there, I'm walking this way. And the Stargate itself, so like if this is the sand and this is where the water starts, and then this is beach, it's interesting because you'd think it would be like in the water. I mean, maybe this isn't interesting. I just find it weird. It's an arch doorway, and instead of being like parallel with the shoreline, it goes perpendicular. So it's like an archway. Oh, here we go. This is easy. So it's here, but the beach, the sand runs this way, and that's all beach, and this is all water, if that makes sense. So anyway, it's got a very precise location, and it's not made of anything physical. It's that material that I talk about, like light silica. It's a light gate. So it's a big archway. You could think about this as like, this is the type of stuff that goes on with like the Bermuda Triangle. You can't see it at all, but it's there. And I could see it with my third eye, or my whole, I mean, your whole body, I think, is like a third eye when you're out of body like this. So it was glowing and it was beautiful, and it was made of stones, but they were light. They were made of light. Imagine cobblestones that are see-through and they're glowing. It was an arch like that. So I went through that one too. And what I was told with that one is that that is a access point where I can go to go see past life memories from this point forward. I hadn't really thought about it as a place where I can choose to go there. And I was brought there to be told that I can, and that it will help me get to other places more intentionally going forward. So that was also very cool. All right, so then we got into what happened in Kauai. And if you didn't watch my video in July or August, basically what happened is that I went to Hawaii to go on a hiking trip, and I was alone with my dad on the trip. And the very first night we got there, I was listening to music, and I had like kind of a buzzing in my ears, and then I had something very similar to sleep paralysis where I couldn't move my body at all. And then I was listening to music at the time. I wasn't asleep, but I woke up like 2 or 3 hours later, and I was over like 3 feet away from the bed, face down, arms like a goalpost, just like on the floor. And my music player had advanced to indicate that 2 or 3 hours had passed. For me, it felt like nothing, and I didn't really get it. And I never really thought about it, which is weird. I mean, I did, but there are certain things that you just kind of let go, you know? So that's one of them. And I put that on my list. I was like, I want to know what happened then. And I want to know what happened that one time where I was alone at my family's summer home. And it was one of those nights where I also had a missing time experience. And that one in particular, especially because I had called my mother that night, and I was like, I know that I'm a grown woman. I know that I'm 21, but I'm freaking out. And I feel the feeling. I feel like they're here. I feel like they're here. I don't know what I said to her in particular, but I just know that night I was like, I could tell that something was going to happen, and I was completely alone and defenseless to it. And, you know, I'll get to that one. So whatever, earlier past life stuff, going around stargates. And then before she even opened her mouth, it was like immediately when she opened her mouth, I just burst into tears to say, okay, let's talk about the night that you got to Kauai. I just instantly burst into tears, and my conscious mind being like removed from the experience. I remember being like, wow, what's going to happen now? Because that's my body like crying. That's energy processing. And I was crying so hard, in fact, immediately, that I like almost like couldn't breathe. And she's like, okay, we're just going to let it, you know, stabilize here and stuff. She's like, what are you seeing? And I'm like, I don't see anything. I just felt really, really like I was in shock. Actually, I felt like I was in shock. I couldn't really like, again, like I couldn't move. I was just crying. And so she was letting me work through it or whatever. And then I ended up seeing the hotel room. I was right back in it. I was right back in that hotel room. And I'm telling her, like, yeah, so, I'm here and I feel like I can't move, but instead of just, nothingness, I could open my eyes and it was just a lot of white light around me. It was a lot of white light around me. And then in the hypnotherapy, instead of seeing anything after that, I was transported out of that room. I did not get to see how. And I went to a different part of the island of Kauai because I was physically there. And as we start like working through this part in this session, I tell her they were waiting for me to come here to be able to do this, to physically be in Hawaii, to be able to do what we did that night. So then I'm over on the rocks, really, or just kind of visualizing a lot of different things, because it was this point in the session where we stopped. I was a lot less conscious. It was a lot more of just like direct channel and things kind of moving through me. So the scenes, I didn't have to like get on a cloud and go like anywhere. It just felt like things started moving really, really quickly. It was too much for my conscious mind to process as well. So there was a lot of visions and things floating through that I know are well absorbed by my spirit, but I'm still, that's why I'm having visions every day and understanding things differently, because you cannot hold all of it consciously. You just can't. And so I was seeing, if you've ever listened to some of my older videos, I've sometimes talked about this large shell. It's a shell. I have an affinity for shells. I'm a Cancer zodiac sign. I'm a water sign. I love big bodies of water. In fact, I require them. I did a program when I was a sophomore in high school for marine biology and outdoor leadership skills. And we started our day in silence by walking to the ocean and journaling or drawing for 15 minutes and then walking back to our little farmhouse. And you couldn't talk until after that was done. And it was amazing. It was so amazing. So anyway, always had an affinity, but I started having visions a few years ago. Here's another one. They're everywhere. I started having visions of this very, very large shell. And if you think about the little point and then like a soft serve ice cream, it was kind of that classical one, but it had, I want to say a holder, like a globe would. A globe is on its axis and it has that metal thing going through it that holds it so that you can spin it. My shell was like that. So I've talked about this shell in the past, and my understanding of it is that it was past life. And like I've had dreams about it. Sometimes I just like feel it. I don't even know how to put it. It's like deja vu, but I'm like, my shell. This is my shell. And I feel the way I feel about like one of my pets, like very fond, almost like it was a part of me and almost like it was conscious. And I knew that it did something with the grid of the energy of the land. It had to do with being on like an outcropping of rocks at the end of this earth, like a beach, very rocky, by the way, very rocky beach is where it was. And so in the hypnosis, they took me there to where it was. And I was still crying. And at that point, I actually cried pretty hard for a while again, because I was seeing a lot of things, like a lot of visions around old civilizations. So Hawaii used to be, those are sunken islands. This is something I had no idea about, was the fact that, I mean, I've always been open-minded to the idea that there have been multiple seedings of humanity. We're not the only humans, there's been other humans, just there's no recollection, because they were literally, there's thousands of years between each seeding of humanity. How are we going to know about, the old ones and stuff? And I have always been open-minded to like Atlantis and stuff. I mean, I think it does us all well to be very open-minded, especially when you have people like Plato talking about it. Now, I know Plato's account is like, it's a I think he talks about it as a fictional thing, but Plato has got some good things to say. So Plato talked about Atlantis. I remember learning about Atlantis growing up, and but again, it's interesting, right? Like, to make a really commercialized like sea world so that if you Google it, that's the only thing that comes up. But so it's like a subcontinent. Long ago. It was not sunken to the extent that it is now. And I saw that being in full tilt, higher consciousness level of society. What I also did not understand, I didn't understand this, but Lemuria and Atlantis were distinct, separate civilizations. Lemuria to come first, Atlantis to come second, and they were both thousands and thousands of years long. I did not understand that. You could have, if you have like, affinity to anything like this, you could have had many lives in Atlantis alone. So that was pretty mind-blowing for me because I saw a few. I saw the one where I was the shell lady, and I'm still very much that shell lady, and that's why they took me there. And the reason why I cried so hard is because it got destroyed. My shell got destroyed. And it had a really important function. But more than that, I was also killed during that lifetime. I was tied up to a rock and burned alive. So I got to see that and experience that. And sometimes when people do hypnotic regressions, they're like in it. Like I said, Ready Player One. That's a good movie too. I have a lot to say about that. It's not a good movie, but it's a movie worth watching for the commentary that I like to make about movies. Sometimes when people are recalling traumatic stuff like this, and this was the case for Peter Faust, who, again, if you didn't watch my alien videos from the summer, they're not really alien videos, they're just me talking, and I mentioned a couple things. Peter Faust is a man who went on Oprah in 1994 with a psychiatrist from Harvard named John Mack, who did his hypnotic regressions, and Peter was one of the first people who was like, I was abducted by aliens, here's my story, and Oprah's like, you know that people think you're crazy, right? And he's like, yep, that's why we're here, doing it together and stuff, and his experience, it's like it's happening in real time. And that's why I was kind of apprehensive to go into this, because I was like, I don't want to see and feel, there's no limit to what it could be. That was not my situation, and I'm grateful for that, because, and the woman who led my hypnosis told me this, sometimes when that's the case and people are really, really emotional, if they're going through, whatever it is, it could be trauma from this life that they're recalling or something from past lives. But it's hard to get them to not identify with, the pain and the suffering that they might be experiencing. And so throughout my entire experience, even though I was in the body, like first person, for this second part, when they were kind of leading me through these visions, I wasn't. I was watching like Harry Potter would in the pensieve, when you're not actually in the scene. But I got to see that, and it was really painful, and it has to do with polarity, with masculine and feminine energy, and like the downfall of the society, and greed and hunger, power hungry energies, and the warring masculine feminine polarities. It was a matriarchal, it was a very balanced society. And neither the masculine polarity or the feminine polarity can operate out of shadow, or else the other will like switch. But there was so much higher level technology and magic that bridged. It was not a third dimensional reality. It was an ascended society that had capabilities that everybody would think are, completely ridiculous. It's the stuff of the movies. So that was really painful. They destroyed my shell, and I was killed, but like very slowly. Oh, it was awful. It was so bad. And my back was broken as well. And I also saw some volcanic eruption. This is later in the timelines of just the whole thing going down in flames, literally. So what's interesting now to think about, I understood that the night I went to Kauai in 2014, now looking back on it, what's really interesting is that shortly after that, I was having issues with insomnia. And that's when I had a session with that man, Peter Faust, who went on Oprah in the 90s. I spoke with him to help me overcome my fear of aliens and my insomnia. But that was like, I didn't, at the time, I didn't really make the correlation. And then, I mean, that's around the time I started having visions of this shell. It's interesting because you don't even realize when certain things start happening or coming online, but that kind of explains it. So the reason why I went with them, and I did get taken like out of the room onto a ship and brought to wherever it is on the island to be given the memory of that experience, because there are certain abilities within what it is that I used to do in several different lifetimes from that time that's relevant now. Okay, but that was 2014. All this time has gone by, and so me going there, what's interesting is that if you think about time and space, it's all happening right here, right now. It gets really trippy for me because I'm like, you know, wait, how am I going to do this? So she was questioning me in hypnosis, asking, why don't you want her to remember these things? If she's being taken to do this, to get the abilities back or whatever, you know, have something dormant triggered to be able to bring certain things within my own soul back into who I am because it's needed, then why can't I remember certain parts of that? And they were very specific in this answer. It's because I don't want to know. And I think that's really funny because I don't like that. It is my oldest, deepest fear. But what's interesting is that they said, she, meaning me, I can see however much I want of these experiences in dreams if I just let myself remember, which is why I got that weird vision before the session. And what I was saying about like this part trips me out. If I knew, so there's a future version, time and space, all here, all now. There's a future version of me that does remember all of it. In some ways, I'm already that version of myself because I'm on track to become a future version of myself. Like it could be tomorrow, you know what I mean? But future version of myself is in a lot closer correspondence with these beings because that's just where we're headed. And the clearing that took place at the session was basically helping me release the fear around all of it and help me understand the connections within the star family lineage and like, who is it? You know, who are they? So I always talk about the Pleiades because I feel deeply connected to the Pleiades. But what was very cool for me was to understand something else I didn't know, is that it's mostly the Lyran connection for me. It is the Pleiadians. It's also Arcturus and Andromeda for me. But I did not know the Lyrans are some of the oldest souls in the universe. And they procreated with the Pleiadians. So that there are past lives that almost become like layered. And wait, I also had an inkling right before I started recording this. My guides were like, you might do better at this tomorrow. And I was like, no. So I'm sorry it's scatterbrained. Who knows? Maybe I will redo this. We're at an hour. That's not too bad. I'm going to keep going. So the Lyran star system got taken over, and it was no longer habitable, and they had to spread out throughout the rest of the galaxies and find places to live, and they came here, as did a lot of ET beings. Like, we think about, in some ways, you could think about humans as we're like the AI experiment of aliens. We're like, are there other aliens? Like, there always has been something else. And when we talk about, okay, wait, pause that too. Okay. So I was talking about how I can have past lives or connections, like to those spirit dragons or these sisters. They're very Pleiadian to me, but I'm understanding that there's a Lyran connection too. And I'm also understanding that my soul was incarnate prior to me meeting them and now after, which is very interesting. And if you don't know what I'm talking about with those sisters, I've talked about having these distinct energies that come through when I'm channeling or receiving guidance from the energy in the past, Anya and Anaya, which both translate, or the etymology of the names is both grace, which is nice. So, like, I'm definitely forgetting things, but that's okay. I'll talk about this again as time goes by. I did get to see just a very quick, like, mothership view. Very, very clean. Hardly any seams on anything or anything at all. Being on that ship. So then we also asked about, why don't I remember? It's a chosen amnesia because I'm not able to get through. It would be like, if I think about how complicated my life has been, just having some quirks about me and how that's led me down so many, side quests around mental health and just trying to figure out how to support myself the best to do what it is I'm meant to do. It was made clear to me that having more knowledge about any of this stuff prior to now would have just complicated things even more. So not only did I and have I not wanted to know any of it, but it wasn't for, my benefit. It wasn't in the path or the cards or the plan in the way that is needed. And so, yeah, I had a big upgrade of sorts in 2014 when I was in Hawaii because of that encounter and what I was able to see. And then the other day, it was almost like I went back there. Like, I legitimately felt like I was in Hawaii, and it was nighttime, which was interesting. Oh, maybe that's because it was nighttime when I was there in the night. Well, whatever. Just to see the rocks, just to see the place where my shell used to be. Like, I don't even know what I'm talking about, but it's so funny because just like with the man in Asia, there's such strong emotion attached to this. And it's coming back in this life because of everything that we're talking about with healed feminine polarities, masculine polarities. This is not just feminism, it's not just America. This is a lot. This is a little big stuff. So just exposing me to some of the deeper history of those ancient times and also how those civilizations worked, because we are kind of moving back into a different part of humanity's existence where we can start to incorporate some of the consciousness-based technologies, teleportation, telepathy, rapid healing, and also energy that powers an entire grid. I mean, it's where it gets into like, it's always been here. It's all already here. It's always been here. If only there weren't so many forces in the way preventing it from being the way of life. But yeah, I mean, so there's a huge fear. I've talked about my hands. I've talked about, well, if you didn't hear me talk about it, I have a weird thing with my fingers where I feel like they're breaking sometimes. It's like deja vu, but it happens all the time. And I'm like, it just hurts. It feels weird. Very sensitive about my fingers because of that. And that has to do with 16th century witch stuff and being persecuted for being a witch. It's so interesting, though, if you think about it. Throughout history, we have tons of ways to put male, even the Buddha or Jesus. But if a woman is ascended in that way, then she's a witch and she gets cast out. It's almost like all of the fear of the empowered feminine polarity goes back to $13,000 years ago when Atlantis fell. This is why these cycles take so long to get through. And there's also why there's prophecies about it. So what's very interesting, I just woke up in the middle of the night the other night and I was like, what if people don't understand about prophecies and timelines? Because I'm always talking about how you can manifest anything because there's only quantum probabilities. There's no definites because of how the collective is manifesting. If that's the case, then how can we even have prophecies? Because there's cycles. Because there's cycles. They're just really long. Some of them are. But anyway, I've done a lot of work with my hands, releasing fear around the fact, that my fingers might, break because I'm safe now and stuff. But there was another level of fear that has to do with, feeling like it's safe to be fully empowered to do everything that I'm able to do. I think a lot of people who resonate with the stuff that I talk about will feel that way. Something really weird and intimidating in the energy of the collective. This is a collective energy, well, just for people who, are into the stuff around starseeds and Akashic integration with this, because it's such a big part of the cycle, there's been a lot of lives since then for other purposes that have helped clear away other things or contribute, to the wheel of fortune. And now we're here. And so it feels particularly unsafe to do or be certain things without knowing quite why. And it's because of the polarities on Earth right now. In both ways. It's scary to witness such violence and fear-based dynamics, but it's also lovely to realize how many people have really intense gifts and skill sets, like ready to go, that will help with this. So anyway, that was like the climax of the experience, the whole Hawaii thing, because it was just so emotional and clarifying. But I was like, oh, thank you for going easy on me. I didn't want to see myself get like lifted out of the room, or I don't know how. To be honest, one of my biggest fears around doing this was that I was going to see that I personally believe, and you're welcome to believe differently, but I believe that not just the American government, but, just more of a united state of operations behind multiple world governments perform their own abductions on people to confuse the narrative. I've listened to interviews of people who were in special higher up levels of the military, and there was one man, his name is Emery Smith. He has a lot of interviews on Gaia online. If you're familiar with that platform, I would watch them. He talks about dissecting tissue, and not having any like instruction, just like super high level anonymous stuff. He went in, he did his duty, he leaves. It's an underground base in like New Mexico or something, you know, floors and floors and floors and floors under the earth. That's where he worked. And he's dissecting tissue, and then he gets into really foreign specimen where it's like, this is definitely not of earth origin, right? But he's still doing his job and stuff. And he was exposed to different beings in this underground base for the US government. And you know, eventually they told him, or he found out somehow, there's decoys all the time. There's tissue, biological tissue from a body that looks like it could be alien, but they made it. It's manufactured. It's false flag stuff. Similarly, there would be beings in this laboratory that would be like a creation of the lab or a real ET being. And it has to do with, or like artificial, like not a real ET, or so just confusing the narrative again. The reason, and he knew that that was the case because they wanted him to not know what was real. And a person might be like, okay, well, if that was his job, then why are there interviews of it on the internet? Well, he ended up fearing for his life because he tried to pass along a few things. I can't remember what it is, for medical patents. And I mean, his house was raided and all of his stuff was destroyed because whoever he had formerly been working for did not like that. But my point is just the way that even people who are in it doing things like that get misled, so too do the people. And I think that a person who had an experience like that, if the government took them, it's going to be a lot more traumatic than what happens if you actually get taken. And so anyway, my fear was that I've been taken and traumatized by the government. I didn't want to say that before because, again, I just, you know, no need to say that. And I've also said these things for years, and know how crazy it sounds to somebody who's not open-minded, but I also know that I've got people who care and are supportive, listening and watching, so thank you. That's not the case. I've never been taken by the government. We were sure to go through that as well, but then there was the secondary experience. So the one that happened when I was at the summer house, what happened that night is that they put something into my arm. They actually took something out of my arm and they put something back into it. And it's right here. What's crazy is that the morning after, okay, so let me back up for just one sec. Where is it? It's funny because when I went to the session with her, I was like, I think it's right here. It's right here. Okay, so I had this experience of missing time. This was probably, I don't know, 2018, 17. And I just don't remember what happened. I remember that evening, just this feeling setting in. Just surveillance, fear, just knowing. I don't know how to put it. And I called my mom and stuff and whatever, and then I was watching a show, but then there's nothing, no memory. And there's also no transitional thing. Like, I don't remember anything. There was no buzzing, there was no sleep paralysis, it was just blank. But then the weirdest thing is that when I woke up the next day, I hadn't set an alarm, and I woke up at 6 a.m. on the dot, and I'm not the type of person who wakes up without an alarm. I need an alarm. And the bed that I was in was completely saturated with water. And again, my arms were like goalposts, and I was face down in the bed, woke up, and I was like, am I all wet? What happened? But I wasn't afraid. I wasn't confused. And I didn't ask any questions about that. I remember I had to drive for like 3 hours I just got in the car and drove, and I never thought about that again. I really genuinely forgot about that experience. But when I woke up, I had an oblong bruise around this little spot. And it looks like a red cut. Like if you took an X-Acto line and just made a, that's what it looks like. And you can still kind of see it, but basically what we went through in the hypnosis for this thing is that it was a really big chakra clearing where you could call it a chakra clearing, but they wanted to do studies on my body as well as replace this. And the reason is so that I can channel, actually. It has to do with heart energy, and it has to do with making artwork and kind of the autonomic movements around being able to process energy at high speeds to be able to create things. And that's very cool to know as well, because that was shortly before I did one of my, well, I've only done a handful of artist residencies at this point in my life, but that one was for several weeks. So that was cool because they got me right before I got to, you know, go make a bunch of artwork. And I did produce a lot of work. But anyway, for that recollection as well, there was no like visuals, you know, there wasn't any like jarring alien remembering. And I appreciate that very much because I was afraid of that. And then when we were talking about that, it was like, you don't even want to know. At this point, the only thing that you were afraid of is not knowing. You've always felt the connection. We'll just say that, because I have. Since I was very, very young, I always felt the connection. Some people are like that. What was very validating for me with this woman is that she actually told me that she found marks like that on her newborn babies, all 3 of them. And they were born, you know, 2 years go by, another baby, 2 years go by, another baby. But she would see these marks and be like, how are the babies all, you know, they're bumping up against something? Like, how has this happened to all 3 of my babies? And then at some point in their childhood, her sons had an experience where they saw something in the yard and they ran in and they told her about it. And the other child was just more like blasé, still a child, but like, oh yeah, that's the spaceship. So, I mean, I've talked about this too, but I do have memories, and I can't even call them that. I don't know, dreams or something. Just looking at things in the sky when I was a kid, or, you know, maybe being able to see certain things that you cannot see when you're an adult, and thinking that because I could see them as a child and I was with other people, they could see it too. But they couldn't. For a similar reason, perhaps, to why, you know, we start to forget our past lives, or our brain slowly moves away from having such an unfettered access to those things. So I feel very liberated because I can remember more if I want to. I just have to ask and I'll start to get it through my dreams. But like the biggest stuff for me was understanding that the feeling that I feel, it's like I feel with any other guides. They're very benevolent. It's like family, because if you think about having different incarnations, I mean, it's like your original, like this is the avatar, right? I think the reason why there's a lot of starseed talk and stuff, this type of thing affects a lot of people because these were in some ways like more original societies than humanity today as we know it. So I'm not saying like so in some ways I am saying that we are hybridized. But everybody is. It's just that the doing of that in terms of experiment with the human gene structure, that started before this seeding of humanity. And it's also the reason why there's a lot of corruption in the world, because of the dominant power structure and certain hybridizations that were done to create a certain kind of human that would be very easy to control. I'm going to pull a Starseed Oracle card. Let me think a little bit more on what I'm saying here and if I've wrapped it all up. Excuse me. Very, very strange feeling. I don't know how to put it into words, but when I say future self, past self, the whole membrane of consciousness and what I'm aware of and what I'm not aware of, it feels really strange right now, because it's like I'm very aware of a future version of myself who's let all of these memories back in. And part of how that's going to happen is, now that I know certain things, I don't need anybody to validate a lot of this, because, I mean, I've seen that Stargate on the beach before. I don't care if anybody knows about it or believes it. I can go back there and have vision. You know, even if you say, well, it was just a vivid dream, I don't care. Then I'll go have my vivid dream. But there's a lot of things that nobody needs to validate for me to be able to start to kind of expand upon certain things, like the mixing, you know, of the remedies and whatnot. And while I do that and I kind of evolve in this way, after having had that session, more memories will come in tandem with that. And that's cool too. They also made me very, very aware. This is why we started with that past life with the guy in Asia. They made me very aware of how much I'm going to create and how beautiful that's going to be for myself and others, but that it will take a lot of work and dedication. And it's Knight of Pentacles energy. There's no rush. I'm allowed to just do it day by day, and there's no pressure. And so I'm imparting that as well, because I believe that's very collective. If you're somebody who kind of is like at this point where you're like, I feel like I have to do something, or like quit my job and start a gallery or some kind of wellness center, you know, like I believe that people a lot more picking up in pace will have these inclinations to do these other things, or just a need to express themselves and what they can do and what they came here to do in a different way. And I just think it's because we're meeting the point in history where that's supposed to happen. But the big like reliever was like, just no rush still. No rush still. It will all take years. That's okay. That's okay. Love it. Deep cellular healing, Arcturus energy, physical and emotional healing. Yeah, I mean, it was a really healing, profound experience for me to do that. I feel like I'm forgetting. That's okay. I'll talk about it later if I need to. The other thing that I was told is that from the Arcturian family lineage, I don't talk to them. I know I talk to the Pleiadians, and now I know that the big question mark, that's the Lyran family. The other cool thing is that they're associated with, Vega is the biggest star in that constellation, with lions, right? Or like feline. And this woman, she is somebody who in her clair senses, her clairaudience, clairvoyance, claircognizance, she doesn't vision like I do. She said that's really interesting, because we were talking about like how we experience the world and stuff, and I felt so met, you know, so understood, because she's the same. It's very cool. She kind of skips all the visioning and goes right to a sense of deep knowing. And I think that's really cool. Now I get that sometimes, but for most of everything I come to understand through my psychic senses, it's a vision first. It's a vision first. And so she was talking to me and she was like, I was meditating the other day and I never get visions. I just get knowing. but I had a vision and it was just a lion. And I was like this one? She's like, yeah, I have a lion right there. By the way, you know, I got this years and years ago. When did I get this? I think I got this tattoo in 2016, 2015, 16. Anyway, the synchronicities, the whole thing, I mean, she never sees visions and she saw the lion and then the whole Lyran thing. Very beautiful. So yeah, I gave it my best. Deep cellular healing. I gave it my best at recounting that experience, but as I got into it, it sort of started to reignite some things that make it harder for me to communicate in a clear way. I'm gonna read from this, but yeah, the other thing I want to say is that like that session was of such great benefit just to be able to run that frequency through my body. There was a few other things happening simultaneously while we were doing different little journeys and stuff. Like I talked about my knees from my video the other day. There was like a full body scan done on my body and my knees and stuff. And when I said like, that's not one and done, I have to still work on it. It will clear out. It's just that I have to every day put that energy through the knee and clear it out in order to fully release that block. All right. Your body knows how to heal. Healing is your natural state. Physical and emotional disharmony can be a reflection of how the world, inner and outer, have been out of alignment. If you're suffering from a mystery or chronic illness, don't allow yourself to think you've done something wrong. Today, it's difficult to navigate our health. If this card has made its way to you, you're being called to focus on your healing in practical ways, to prioritize your health, to be kind and tender to your miraculous body, to give yourself the grounding and care you need, to put your body first, to nourish yourself as you would a newborn baby, to treat yourself with tender care. You may be called to switch things up with your body or your emotional well-being, to call in a team of helpers to support you in navigating any challenges you may be experiencing emotionally. The Arcturians are a galactic group of beings who have mastered deep cellular healing and emotional healing. They want you to know that it's possible to feel vibrant in your body and well in your skin, to have your cells return to effervescence and vitality, to find calmness and contentedness, to have a soothed nervous system and a tranquil heart. Yeah, I think I said this months ago in a reading, but like even to laugh, that can heal you. To put yourself in a state where you genuinely are connected to like love vibration, it's healing. Like at a cellular level, the longer you can sustain that, the more healing it will be. I don't know if I got this thought out, but I was talking. No, I didn't. That's so ridiculous. But I managed to bring them back around. Okay, so I was talking about, I talked to the Pleiadians. Now I know about the Lyran connection. Then I got off on the lion. Back to the Arcturians. In Arcturus, I was nobility. So this is an Arcturian card for some reason. Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. We think of, I think about people when we talk about like past lives and somebody who's skeptical, like, you know, say somebody has a past life reading and they're like, they said you were a king and blah, blah, blah. And the person's like, oh, they tell everybody that. Not everybody was a queen in their past life. But if you think about it, think about how many different kingdoms and lands and time periods and, I mean, other seedings of humanity. There's been a lot of time to have past lives within. It's been a long time. The most mind-blowing thing for me was how just the passage of time that I was exposed to in those early civilizations. It was truly mind-blowing because I was like, oh, so this is the foreign experience. That made more sense. That makes sense to me because I have said this too in a video, but it's like a huge theme in my life is me just not really understanding why it's like this, everything, and wanting for things to be different, and having ideas about how we can do that. The other thing, and my lasting thought, was like, because I haven't, yes, sure, before this session, after talking with Peter Faust when I was younger, or like 8 years ago, or whenever that was, I was still open to the idea, his big assistance, or what he did for me that day. Unfortunately, he said a bunch of stuff that made me feel worse, not any fault of his, but really just because I wanted him to be like, your experience is totally different from mine. You're probably not in the camp of people that I'm in. But it was the opposite. He said, yeah, well, I was identical. I always had this sense. I always had this like fear. I always had, and then I had a few incidents where I was like, that was weird. But he told me, why must you think of them as anything other than the way that you think of the other guidance, that you work with? Why do you have to think of them as being anything other than angels? And I was like, okay. And that's what I've done ever since, but I haven't had any interest to take it further until last week. And so I'm feeling in the days that are passing, it's a much more, it's cool. It's got a golden light to it. So the way that I will receive communication and channeling from like that part of my connection going forward, I'll be able to know with a lot more clarity that that's where it's coming from and that's who is speaking to me. And that's really important. Because like my little tour, my little past life, this and that during this session, there was a lot of different beings there. It's all of the ones who I have with me on a daily basis. And these beings have been very, not like patient with me. It's not they're like waiting for me to wake up and figure it out, because they still protect and guide and help me just like they do with a lot of beings, and also just the earth in general, no matter what. But yeah, interesting to see how this will pan out. And then the other thing, I think I said this the other day, every morning I wake up and it's almost like I'm talking, like I'm already explaining things. I'm like, who are you talking to? What is going on? And I'm like, I should reach for my phone. This sounds important. And then I just don't. Like that happened this morning and I'm like, I should have recorded it because it was like the coolest concept. I don't know what it has to do with, but now I'm seeing hexagons, prisms and stuff. So there's a lot within the way that I'm experiencing my own mind that's still kind of unfolding, and so it'll be cool to see how it pans out for the next few months. But the other thing that I'm thinking about now is like, it wouldn't have made any sense for me earlier in my development to understand certain parts of what I was shown in this session. And that feels like a collective message, because it's like, again, there's this desire that's very human to, like, once we know something, to be able to implement it, or to be able to see it through and like receive the benefits of knowing it immediately. Or I certainly fall victim to that. Like I said, with my creative projects, I have the idea, I want to get it done, and I want to see it through and all this stuff. And there's a lot of patience and discipline. I know this doesn't come as hard to other people as it does for me, but I also think it's somewhat relatable, especially on the spiritual journey, where it's like you have these new levels, or like we could call them, plateaus of moving out of the woods, if you want, into a clearing of stabilizing and regrounding into our abilities, or our new, fresh, expanded sense of awareness, before you go through another little uptick in ascension again. And that's all very the way it's meant to be. Sometimes I think that even though we're going through that process, our ego minds, our conscious minds and our egos can pop in and try to like hijack that process. And I know that throughout my life, mine has done that so many times, like wanted to, I don't know. I'll just say this too. 2012, 2013, I was so interested in learning how to astral project. 2012, 2013. I would fall asleep listening, headphones, eye mask, blackout, perfect scenario. And I would pray, and I would say, like, I'm ready. Take me. I want to go somewhere. Show me, what this is like. And it never happened. When it finally happened for the first time, it was like a year or two later, and it just happened one day. And it was incredible. But we can think that we're very ready for certain experiences, and they're just not meant to happen yet. So I feel really illuminated by all of the stuff that I did receive, and all the things that I didn't see. I'm okay with it. I'm good. I trust. I don't need to know. Another thing that's interesting is that her and I were talking about these types of like implants and stuff, and she's like, I mean, yeah, you can. Sometimes people, you don't really hear about this, but there are people who have found them and then they go to get it removed or something, but that kind of defeats the point of it, because then they have to come and put it back in you. And this is the most important thing. I should have said this long ago. If you're somebody who has ever had an experience like this, it's just the same with anything else in life where you agreed to it before your birth. You agreed to it before your birth, and you could even say that to be true for the abductions that I believe happen that really aren't ET, and they're more so domestic terrorism, really, to control the narrative. I should be careful with these silly words. Forgetting my videos, I don't know, flagged or shadow banned or whatever, but it doesn't matter. Even if that were to be something that happens to somebody, there's still something that's agreed to prior to birth that has to do with the soul's growth and learning. Yeah. So with that, I'm going to go for the evening. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions, if you have any questions about this, email me. I would love to talk about it more. I'm sure I'll be talking about it more. Thank you so much to the person that brought this quantum hypnotherapy healing method, quantum healing hypnotherapy, to my attention. I'm definitely going to be doing it again. But it's going to take a month or 2 or 3 for me to kind of just catch up with the effects of this one session. And, of course, there were certain things that came up in it that are more personal. I'm not going to share them, but I recommend it. And the coolest thing is that, when I learned about it, I just Googled it, and then I used the zip code thing, and I just found a practitioner. And she ended up being, like, such a pal. And, yeah. All right, I'm going to ring my chime. So if you have headphones on or something, then take them out or turn the volume down. All right, hope everyone's doing well, and I'm really excited for the 11/11 portal coming up, and I'll be doing a reading for that soon. I'll probably be doing a reading for that on Thursday or Friday. The energy of it is very potent. We're already starting to feel it ramp up, and we're going to feel it for a couple days after. It's kind of like a new moon. The 11/11 and in December 12/12, these are very transformative times for this part of the year. Like 2023, the vision that I just got is like, it's like some I mean, the vision that I saw is like a performer coming on stage. It's weird. It's like a striptease, okay? But we didn't understand that she was wearing, the lady is 2023, okay? We didn't understand that she was wearing so many garments, so we're like, just take it off. Okay. She's removing her clothes, and there's always another layer. This is so weird. And then November and December, we finally get down to like the bare skin. That's saucy. But it's a very funny thing to like see. And she's like taking off like scarves and stuff. The energy of these portals is really raw and beautiful, because the purpose of 2023 is almost complete, you know? But it's like this grand finale where if there was a crowd of people watching somebody do a strip tease in that fashion, it would be increasingly exciting to get down to the earmuffs. Okay, bye.